So when we're dealing with the qualifying the buyer, I mean, let's just look at the easier kind of version of this. Obviously, if we're just trying to figure out how much pity payment they can qualify for, remember how these numbers work. Using conventional loans, it's 28 and 36% ratios. And so what we're saying is you can't have a housing expense that exceeds 28% of your gross monthly income. And you cannot have total recurring debts, including housing expense, that exceeds 36% of your gross monthly income. So what you do is you take your gross monthly income and you find what that equates to. So if this person has a, number one right here, gross monthly income of $3,000, you would take your $3,000 and multiply it by your 28%. So what that tells us is they cannot afford more than $840 a month in total housing expense. Okay, that's the 28% ratio. So then if we took their 36% ratio based on their gross monthly income, $3,000 times 36% says that they cannot have total recurring obligations, including housing expense, of more than $1,080. Well, they've already got credit card debt and college loan debt. And so you have to subtract that out to see, well, what's left over to go towards the housing expense. So you got to subtract out your 150, and your 250, which gives us what did I do wrong? I did plus 180. Or 1080 minus 150 minus 250. So now, because they've already got these recurring debts, they could not afford housing expense of more than 680. And so remember, there is the more strict of the two, as Nathan just pointed out. And so they cannot break either rule is the way to remember it. So you can afford a housing expense of 840, because if they gave you 840, they break the 36% rule. How much housing expense can you afford? 680. That's it, because of your current financial situation. Now remember, the other thing that confuses people is the opposite style of problem, because that was, well, here's how much you make, how much house can you afford? The opposite is, well, here's what you're trying to afford, how much would you have to make? So if you remember, we take a look at somebody, buyer wants to borrow $150,000, her recurring expenses are $300 a month for her car, $200 a month for credit card debt. The lender tells her the pity will be $1,000 per month. How much does she have to make to qualify? Well, in other words, what we're saying is she wants to be able to afford this housing expense of $1,000 a month. So how much would she have to make that this is only 28% of it? Because that's how we're reverse engineering it, right? Normally we said, here's what you make times 28%. But here's what we're saying you have to be able to afford. So divide by 28% to see how much you have to make. So how much would she have to make under the 28% rule to be able to qualify for this? 1,000 divided by 28. She would have to be able, or she would have to make at least 3,571.43 in order to qualify under the 28% rule. But then we got to look at the 36 as well, because you have to check both ratios. So her housing expense is $1,000, but 36% rule includes her $300 a month for her car and $200 a month for credit cards. So now what we're stating is she has total recurring obligations of $1,500 a month if she wants to afford this house. How much would she have to make that this is only 36% of that? So 1,500 divided by 36%, she would have to make $4,166.67. And remember, it is always the more strict that prevails. And in this case, you're not affording this house because you have these recurring debts unless you make at least $4,166 a month. So to answer this one that you shared in the chat, and then we'll go to the one that Jonathan posted. Julie is buying Florence's house. The closing date belongs to the seller of the sales transaction. September 1st, day 244 of the year. The buyer's loan is $787,800. There's a lot going on in this one. 90%, 30 years, 8%. The monthly payment on the loan is blah, 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 with financial going to interest in the first month of the closing. Julie must prepay interest for the period of September 2nd through September 30th using the 360-day method for prorating. What is Julie's prepaid interest amount?
So just so I'm understanding, the amortization schedule doesn't kick in until September 30th. So this is interim interest.
Yeah, but hold on. There's something wrong here? What's wrong here is it's not charging her interest on September 1. If it's closing on September 1, she starts paying interest on September 1. So this question is an issue because it's saying that you're only charging her interest from September 2nd through September 30th. If it's closing September 1, you would give her all that interest. So here's the thing with interim interest. When we're dealing with taxes, rents, and HOA dues, the seller owns the day of closing. But because interim interest is the buyer's interest, the buyer gets it on the day of closing. The bank says, we're lending you money on September 1, start paying interest on September 1. And so what they're suggesting here is you're closing September 1, your first payment is not going to be October, it's going to be November. November's going to pay for October's interest. So you've got to prepay interest for the month of September. And it's the whole month. So this actually should be, let me see if they screwed this up, and I need to change this question right now because this one is from the publisher. It would be loan amount because it doesn't say, it says 90%, but we don't need that. 30 years, 8%. So it'd be your loan amount of $787,500 times your interest rate of 8% is annual interest, divided by 365 because we're using the 365-day method. So that'd be how much per day. And then it should be 30 days because it would be September 1st through September 30th. So they have this wrong because what they're trying to tell you is that it's only...
See, that's what I got.
Yeah, this question is wrong because...
Fried my brain.
So if they're stating that you're only paying the 2nd through the 30th, they're basically saying that you're paying 29 days. And so let's do it that way to see if that's what... Man, I'm about to change this because this is not a good question. So $787,500 times your 8% again, divided by 365 times 29. That's also not an answer choice. What is going on with that question? Who sent me this? Nathan? I can find it easily. 22. Let me make sure I'm not missing something before I reach out to the publisher and tell... I mean, I can change the question without them, but I just want to know the closing date belongs to the seller and the sales transaction September. Your buyer's loan amount. No, yeah, 90%, 30 years, 8%. Monthly payment on the loan is $5,000. So are they trying to do 28 days? Is that what they're doing? We'll try if it's 28 days. Either way, the question is just a bogus question. So this is not lovely. One last time here, 787,500 times 8% divided by 365 times 28. There's not a single way that this works. No. I'm going to mark that question and fix it right now. Simeon, what did you just put in the chat there?
I just put like a map guide.
I'm going to save that question over there, and I'm going to change that. Obviously, that is a publisher question, and the math ain't mathing on that one. So that one's, and that's why I told you, if ever you are doing it and you're like, well, this doesn't make sense, bring it to my attention, because I can fix that stuff. But these were uploaded from the publisher, and I have not taken absolutely every single one of the 1,400 questions that are from the publisher, and I haven't done it. Okay. Although, did I tell y'all that my plan is to just start, like, as a hobby, drinking whiskey and taking random practice questions and recording them, and then just start uploading them to the YouTube channel. I'm just going to get wasted and take real estate exam practice questions and just post them as a review. I think that'd be hilarious. Right? Who wouldn't watch that? You know, like, you'd be studying and watching me like struggle because I'd be like too drunk to even think straight. It'd be hilarious. What you got, Ekta?
The question to ask, it was in one of the practice tests. George promises to give a listing to agent Vanessa, provided she give him a 15% kickback on her commission when the transaction closes. Instead, Vanessa cuts her commission rate charged to George to cover the amount of fee. In this instance, has Vanessa acted properly?
Do you know which question that is? Like, where is it at so I can pull it up?
This was, let me see.
The state side?
Yeah, this was in the state side. That's correct.
The one attempt only stateside?
Yeah, the 60 question one.
Okay. And remember, like, so those are all randomized. So not all of you would have gotten that question, but it sounds like a couple of you did. So let me pull it up. I'm going to pull up your test, Ekta. Stateside, different every time. There we go. And then just give me a couple of the keywords so I can hunt for it.
George, Vanessa.
George. Okay. Yep.
George,
there we go.
Vanessa.
Cool. Got it. George promises to give a listing to agent Vanessa provided she gives him a 15% kickback on her commission when the transaction closes. Instead, Vanessa... I don't know why Pandora started playing. I apologize. Instead, Vanessa cuts her commission rate charged to George to cover the amount of the fee. In this instance, Vanessa.
I just didn't understand the whole logic.
George promises provided she gives him a 50% kickback. Okay, so let's talk through this one, because this one has got a couple issues. But I guess it's not technically wrong. I just don't love this question yet again. George promises to give a listing to agent Vanessa. The implication here is George is the seller. So he's talking about offering, you can take my listing if you give me a 15% kickback, meaning cut me a check for 15% of the commission that I'm going to pay you at closing. Instead, Vanessa cuts her commission rate to charge to George to cover the amount of the fee. So basically, she just reduced her commission rate by the same amount as opposed to giving him a kickback. There's nothing wrong with doing this. And so she didn't pay a kickback, so that's why this is not the answer. Now, the reason why this is a prime example of, like, be very careful with the questions, because you got to pick the best answer. This is not illegally conspired with her principal, because there's nothing wrong with discounting this. Has violated state's regulation since the commission cut is effectively a kickback. Nope, it's not a kickback. It's a reduction in rate. Not a kickback here either, but here's the other thing about this. This kickback would be legal in North Carolina. It is completely legal to give a portion of our commission to our client. Why? Remember, they're a party to the transaction. You only need a license if it's real property for others for compensation. It's their house. It's real property. They're getting money. It's not for others. So technically speaking, even if this was given as a kickback in North Carolina, it would have been legal. But as it is, this best answer is she's acted appropriately and it's not a kickback. I don't love the structure of this question, but even if it was a kickback and she gave him the 15%, it is legal in North Carolina. It is.
It's just I felt like there was not enough information given to judge the scenario. Like,
Yeah.
who's George? Like,
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, so that's where when you're reading through this, George could have been like an agent referring out a listing. But then, that's where I told you there are just some really dumb questions, and I have to leave them in there because the people who wrote the other exam probably have some really dumb questions. And all you can answer is with what you have. And so you can definitely state she did not give a kickback. And we know it's legal to reduce a commission rate. Now, obviously, that was my first inclination too, is that George was another agent and she just screwed George out of a referral fee. But that wasn't an answer choice. So then it kind of like, okay, well, let's pick the best answer based on the suggestion that George is probably just a seller. Yeah. And I'll come back to some of those other questions. Let's do this one. If a buyer is offering $400,000 on a property, has an 80% loan to value loan and a 5.25% interest, how much interest is being paid in the first month if the debt service payment is $1,767 monthly? So this is amortization math. So remember, fixed rate loan, debt service is this. That means this is going to be the exact same amount every single month. But what they want to know is how much interest is getting pulled from that in payment number one. So all you're doing for this one, $400,000 purchase price times your 80% loan to value ratio gives you your loan amount. Loan amount times your interest rate of 5.25% gives us annual interest. And then annual interest, remember, they always take their interest first. So divide it by 12 because you're paying monthly interest on your first payment. So how much is going towards interest on payment one? $1,400. Which means everything that's above and beyond that would go towards your principal balance. So if the question was, what's your principal balance after payment one? It would be $1,767 minus the $1,400 going towards interest. And so $367 would get deducted from your $320,000. So these are all different types of amortization math. But this one's just saying, well, how much is going towards interest? Which is loan amount times interest rate gives you annual interest divided by 12 because you're paying monthly interest. So $1,400.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, you lost me. I'm so sorry.
Just for this question right here, the fictitious supplemental question I gave you.
This question right here, and I swear to God, this was the question I was searching for. I think.
Okay.
One of them but yeah. So 400,000.
Is your purchase price, but interest can't be charged on money you didn't borrow. So you got to find your loan amount first. How much did you borrow? Which is 80% loan to value ratio. So 400,000 times what you borrowed of 80%. You borrowed 320,000. That's your loan amount. And now when you start paying back your loan amount, you're going to be charged interest based on your annual interest rate. Well, your interest rate is 5.25%. So your loan amount times 5.25% gives us annual interest of $16,800, but you're not making an annual payment, you're making a monthly payment. So divided by 12 tells us how much you owe in interest on payment number one. And so what happens is, remember, you're making the same principal and interest payment, and the bank always takes their interest first, and whatever's left over after they take their interest gets applied towards your principal balance. But the answer here is just $1,400.
Yep. Okay, I was with you on that one. Perfect.
Any other specific questions y'all want to take a look at?
I do have one set. Let me share it in the in the chat to make it a little easier.
Yep.
This is question 31. Here you go. Or wait, it's loaded. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Let me zoom in here. North Carolina Real Estate Commission may discipline a broker for which of the following prohibited acts? Failing to verify every entry on the borrower's settlement statement. Not that one, because we don't have to verify every entry. Refusing to share brokerage commission with a broker from another state. No, probably not that one either. Not disclosing that the buyer of the broker's listing is a member of the broker's family. Not disclosing that the buyer of the broker's listing is a member of the broker's family. That one is probably the answer I'm leaning towards right now. And then using a sales contract form furnished by a client rather than an approved standardized North Carolina form. Not that one. Remember I told you, if they say use this napkin written contract, you can use it. You're not going to be in trouble for that. Should we advise them that they shouldn't do that? Yes, but we're not in trouble. C is the only one that's going to get us in trouble because that's a conflict of interest. If we're your listing agent, Jonathan, you hire me to list your house for sale. And I've got fiduciary duties to you. And then there's a buyer. And I don't tell you that that buyer is my brother. That is a conflict of interest, right? Because I may not be playing only for you. I may be trying to help them out as well. So that would be, failure to disclose. That's actually 93A-6A4, acting for more than one party in a transaction without consent of the parties. Because if I've got this conflict of interest, it could be undisclosed dual agency or just a conflict of interest in general. So C is the only one that I'm going to be disciplined for. None of the other ones are disciplinable offenses. There's like way too many B's. Yeah.
So maybe I'm reading it wrong, but D to me reads that you're just using a form your client gave you, which you shouldn't be disciplined for. Am I reading that wrong?
Which of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission may discipline a broker for which of the following prohibited acts? Yeah, D, you're not going to be disciplined for. The question is, which would you be disciplined for? None of them except for C.
Oh, balls. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which would you be disciplined for? C only. Not disciplined for A, not disciplined for B, not disciplined for C. Not disciplined for D. C is the only one that you could be disciplined for because it is a violation of 93A-6A4. Acting for more than one party in a transaction without the informed consent. That one. Yep.
That was user error. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yep, for sure.
Well, I know that one got me as well, just like Seth's always saying about reading every single word, because I read C. I wasn't associating the family member with the selling. I don't know. I've jumbled that one up, but that one got me as well.
Yeah, so not disclosing that the buyer of the broker's listing is a member of the broker's family. So if it's their listing, that means you represent the seller. And this is somebody in your family, and so you've got fiduciary duties to the seller. Now you got this conflict of interest because your family member is interested in the property that you owe fiduciary duties to the seller on. Conflict of interest. And as I stated, this is arguably, if we go back to license law and commission rules, I'm sure I have it in a tab somewhere, but we're just going to pull it up here. As I stated, they do love to test you on these disciplinary actions, or these prohibited acts, we'll call them. And so I told you the most likely one here is number 4, if memory serves correctly. All right, here. Too far. Here we go. Right there. Acting for more than one party in a transaction without the knowledge of all parties for whom he or she acts. Even though you may not have an agency relationship, this would be a conflict of interest. So that would definitely fall into a problematic thing there. What else?
Seth, I have one more question.
Yep.
In a general partnership, does all general partners have to be real estate brokers?
No. So you're talking about if an entity is created and it's going to get a firm license. And so then the question is about like the qualifying broker. So remember, the qualifying broker has to be a full broker and they have to be a principal member. Not everybody has to be a qualifying broker. So if I create an entity and, I name all 14 of us as, managers of an LLC, or all of us are general partners in a partnership, only one of us has to be a broker to qualify to get that a firm license. And so the clarification, though, is if it was a partnership we created, a limited partner would not be a powerful enough position. So it has to be at least a general partner, which means they are maintaining liability. They are in the ownership. A limited partner is only a financial person. So they're not in trouble if that company gets sued. They just have money invested. Yeah. What else? Nothing.
Can you give a little review of these documents where agent can use the pre-printed forms and the scenarios where agent cannot use the pre-printed forms? And I think I'm getting confused between the national part and the North Carolina part, like the 2T forms and stuff.
Yeah. So let's talk about North Carolina. In North Carolina, we have Rule 58A.0112, which is a sales contract rule. And what it states is a broker can use any pre-printed contract form that's been drafted by an attorney, so long as it contains 19 required provisions, and so long as it does not contain the 2 prohibited provisions. So we cannot use one that has any of the 2 prohibited things, which is no disclaimer of liability and no discussion of brokerage compensation. So we can use any other document. So if we had an attorney draft one up for our firm, could we use it? Yeah. Can we use the 2T that's drafted by NC Realtors if we're a realtor member? Yeah. All of that's okay. And so, any contract can be used. It's just we can't draft them because to do so would be the unauthorized practice of law. But if somebody else does and it doesn't break any laws, can we use it? Yes. So don't get caught up on like you have to use the 2T. The only time we would not be allowed to use one is if it contained the prohibited provisions. And then, same thing to our clients. Our clients could draft up whatever they want. Our clients could have an attorney draft one up, right? They could find one online. They could, whatever, all that's fine. But the rule really deals with ones we're suggesting for use. If we're suggesting it, it has to meet these legal criteria and cannot, break the laws, the rules.
I think there was a question that got me confused. In North Carolina, the rule regarding completion of deeds and deed of trust is that the correct answer was may not drop or fill in the blankets of printed forms for others.
Deeds and deeds of trust do not have blanks. What question is that?
So in North Carolina, the rule regarding completion of deeds and deeds of trust is that licensees may not draft or fill in the blanks of printed forms for others.
Okay. Is that the same test?
This was, give me a second. This was the state part as well, I guess.
This one.
Yeah.
In North Carolina, the rule regarding completion of deeds and deeds of trust is that I don't know. So the reason why, let's just kind of talk through this. Deeds and deeds of trust are legal documents. And so we are allowed to fill in the blanks on pre-printed sales contracts, but a deed and a deed of trust would be the practice of law. Those are legal documents. While we can fill in the blanks on sales contracts, we cannot. And so if you actually look, let's go back to this and I'll show you. Rule 58A.0111 deals with drafting of legal instruments. And so what it states is, A broker acting as an agent in a real estate transaction shall not draft offers, sales contracts, options, leases, promissory notes, deeds, deeds of trust, or other legal instruments by which the rights of others are secured. However, a broker may complete pre-printed offer, option contracts, sales contracts, and lease forms in a real estate transaction when authorized or directed to do so by the parties. So it clearly states that we are given consent to do it for sales contracts, offers, and stuff like that, but does not give us an exception for pre-printing or pre-printed contract or deeds of trust, because that would be the unauthorized practice of law. So because it's specifically talking about those legal documents that we're not accepted to do, that's why it would we cannot draft or fill in these. Could we fill in the blanks on a sales contract? Yes. Could we draft a sales contract? No. But this is a very specific deed of trust, legal instrument question. And yet again, not a lovely question. I don't love it, but that's, unfortunately how the test is structured.
That's why I got confused.
Yeah.
Deeds of trust and sales contracts. So.